And there we are live. It's Nonprofit Problem Solver Podcast. This is episode 37, and I'm joined by Tim Kachuriak. Welcome, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great. I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time. So we're going to be talking about what prompts people to give. Let me just start off by thanking YachtMe as my sponsor, as well as PodPro Audio, making professional podcasting easy. And what we are now is in the live main event session, which happens on the YachtMe virtual event platform, which is 100% free to nonprofits. And if there are folks in the chat, we'll try and pick up those comments as we go. And there may be an opportunity afterwards, once we've done this sort of 45 minutes live, to have people around tables at the end, which is a great feature if you are interested in using YachtMe for your virtual event. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, and give us an introduction and where people can find you online and an orientation to you.
Great. Yeah. So my name is Tim Kachuriak, and I'm the founder and chief innovation and optimization officer for Next After. And Next After is really three things. We are a fundraising research lab. We're a consultancy agency. And we are a training institute. And if you like, I can explain briefly those three different pieces and kind of how they fit together. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So inside of our fundraising research lab, we focus on doing really two types of research. The first type is what I refer to more as forensic research. And basically what we're doing is we're going and we're trying to analyze large amounts of data across the nonprofit sector. And what we're looking for in the data is patterns that lead to opportunities to unlock greater digital fundraising performance. So we're hyper focused around digital fundraising. We believe, like many, that it's the future of fundraising, but it's still underdeveloped opportunity within our space. The challenge, frankly, that we've run into in our research is that the kind of data we're most interested in analyzing either does not exist or it's not readily accessible. And that's because what we're most interested in is trying to experience the charity, the nonprofit, the NGO from the donor's point of view. And so we found the best way to get that perspective is simply by becoming donors ourselves. And so what we'll do is, about 4 or 5 times a year, we'll launch one of these major mystery donor studies where we'll go out and subscribe to hundreds of different nonprofit organizations at the same time. We'll monitor everything that they send to us, every email, every text message, every voicemail. We've got boxes of direct mail piled to the ceiling. We analyze each piece of correspondence, and then we wait for the organizations, to invite us to become a financial partner by making a gift. And when they do that, we go online to their website and we'll give a donation as small as $20, as large as $5,000, really depending on the study and what we're trying to analyze. And then we continue to monitor and document that new donor journey that we receive as a financial contributor. And it's fascinating, Kev. I mean, it's just like, it's so wildly varying from organization to organization. So it's
I
really
could geek out on the data here. I'll try not to. That's fantastic. Okay. So I've already can think of a couple of routes we can follow when we get to this heart of this question, what prompts people to give. So that's the forensic research. You said there were two types of research that you do?
And so the other type is, we take a lot of the things that we learn and a lot of things that, frankly, that we see other organizations do, and then we bring it over to the other part of our research lab, which is really focused on applied research, where we're basically using the web as not just a channel of communication, but as a platform, as a living laboratory where we can run rigorous scientific experiments to try to understand what works and what doesn't work. So I think to date, we've documented like over 2,800 different online fundraising experiments across a whole range of different organizations. And we're finding that a lot of our long held kind of best practices, like tried and true approaches, actually don't work. And so that's kind of what we're really, trying to discover, like what moves and inspires people to give. And oftentimes it's very counterintuitive.
Well, that's fascinating. I'm looking forward to getting into that. But I invited you at your request to go through all the elements of Next Actor. So I will I'll try and keep my curiosity in check and let you discuss the consultancy.
I'll be very brief. So the lab is really kind of like our opportunity to learn and discover, both from like a market study type of standpoint of actually going out and becoming donors, but then also on the testing side to try to figure out what works. So then we take everything we learn in the lab and we bring it over to the two other parts of our company. The second is the Next After Institute, which is the training and equipping arm of Next After. We develop a whole bunch of different resources for nonprofits. Most of them are free for people that want to go really, really, really deep. We have 8 different certification courses that you or your staff can take to be able to become, certified in online fundraising optimization, whether that's email fundraising optimization, landing page optimization, turning Facebook likes into donors, what have you. So that's the training side. We also host an annual conference every year called the Nonprofit Innovation Optimization Summit, where we bring in digital marketing leaders from all over the world to come and pour into our nonprofit community for about 2 days. And that's kind of like the consultancy side, and then the last piece is the consultancy side. So the other way that we use all of our research is to really inform the work we do with our clients. We've got about 36, 37 larger nonprofits that we work with to basically function as their digital agency. So that's Next After.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. And so if people are interested in the training, free or otherwise, where would they go? Is it just nextafter.com?
Yep, nextafter.com. Everything's there. Our entire library of all of our experiments are available there. So you can go in, you can review them and search them and just learn alongside of us.
Wow. Okay. That is really interesting. So 2,800 experiments and some counterintuitive findings. Now we don't have to start there. But I feel that's a really good entry point into what prompts people to give, what it is that you are trying to find out. I mean, I'd be interested if we get to it to understand a bit about how you set up the experiments and the way you're thinking about approaching that question, because I think that in itself is an interesting line of inquiry about how you're getting to using the digital space to investigate what is for many people an emotional interaction with nonprofits that they care about.
And very irrational, I might add, right? Like giving is a very irrational behavior.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, because when I'm listening, I'm hearing a lot around the digital space, and it seems like, as you see, when you do your mystery events, that you're getting a huge amount of detail, clicks and what you might call the sort of mechanical interaction of the donor journey. But I wonder how you can imitate that emotional perspective of someone who's, possibly come across an organization in an ad hoc way, but also someone who might be interacting with an organization or a cause or a purpose or a mission that they feel passionately about. That must be difficult to hypothesize and try and recreate.
Yeah, I mean, you're actually, you're articulating the precise thing that we try to test, through our research, which is like, how do we actually communicate a more effective value proposition? So what we found out of all of our testing, all of our research, yes, there's little low-hanging fruit things you could do. You can make the giving experience easier and take some of the friction out of the process. You can make donors feel more safe or more secure, or that the money's going to go to the right place. All that stuff is what I consider to be more like hygiene kind of stuff. And then you can kind of get into like behavioral economics, like testing things like reciprocity, like I give you something, you give me something back, or testing this idea of like commitment building, getting people to take small moves that moves them towards a predisposition to wanting to actually give their money. But the really interesting things are when we were actually like testing, like you said, the emotional kind of like the irrational elements of giving. And this is kind of an area that we've moved into over time. And right now, we've partnered with the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy in the UK, Dr. Adrian Sargent and Dr. Jen Chang. And we actually appointed a Next After fellow that works there. And they're trying to take all of the theoretical and academic work they're doing in the area of philanthropic psychology and turn that into things that we can actually go test with our research partners. So that's been really, really exciting to see some of that.
Yeah, because that's where I guess I was coming from with it. As I said, I was looking forward to this conversation from a behavioral psychological perspective, and then here at 2,800 hypotheses tested through these massive the mystery things. I thought, oh, that sounds almost mechanical as opposed to psychological. And yes, so you use the term hygiene, which I think is a fantastically useful term for reducing the number of clicks to make a gift, for example, or the type of communication or speed with which a nonprofit replies or clarifies some questions potential donors might have. But it sounds like you are approaching it from this behavioral psychological perspective.
That's correct. That's correct. But I will tell you that there is a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of nonprofit online giving experiences. So if you like, I can give you kind of a couple quick just examples of things.
I mean, there's so much. It would be really useful because a lot of people who listen to the podcast are executive directors, directors of development, and occasionally board members who want to follow up what they hear with an action. So any clear actions we can do is take away.
So let me give you a couple quick findings from, for example, from some of our market research study and how that's translated into things that we've tested and found to be effective at solving some of those problems. So the first thing is about 3 or 4 years ago, we did a mystery donor study called "Why Should I Give to You?" which was the Nonprofit Value Proposition Index study. We went to 127 organizations and we simply asked them to answer what we believe is the telling value proposition question. The question is this: if I am your ideal donor, why should I give to you rather than some other organization or not at all? We contacted them 4 different ways. We went to their website and we called the 1-800 number. We called them on the phone, said, "Hey, I was thinking of giving a gift. Can you tell me why should I give a gift to you rather than someone else or not at all?" And we listened. We transcribed their responses. We also sent that same question via the contact us form on the website. So email was the second channel. We messaged them on Facebook, direct message them on Facebook. And then we finally looked at what their donation page had to say in terms of actually what it communicated to answer that question. Here's a couple things we found that were pretty troubling. First of all, of the organizations, I know. Just
you asked the same organization 4 different ways, the same question. I mean, this is
you know where I'm going. Okay, so
4 different answers.
The first thing we found is the emails that we sent to these organizations. 1/3 of those emails were never replied to. Right. Okay. 1/3. So when I say hygiene, that means like you need to answer people when they ask you questions, especially if they're a donor intent type of question, like, "Hey, I'm thinking of giving a gift. Why you?" Right. Yeah. So that was the first thing. Right. 1/3 of organizations didn't really respond when we messaged them on Facebook as well. So again, just simple hygiene. And this is probably sometimes due to maybe nobody has tested that in a while in the organization. They just don't know. Maybe something's broken. It should be going to this person, or that person's not there anymore, or whatever. But that's something that can be addressed. So one simple thing that everybody on this call can do is go fill out the contact us form on your website and see what happens. Like, see who responds, or actually have somebody that's one of your friends or colleagues that's not inside your organization go do that, and just kind of get a feel for, do they respond in a timely fashion. So that's one piece.
But it's also just as a matter of, it's also hygiene. It's just making sure that those information flows actually work. Those channels are still operating as you anticipate they would.
Precisely. That's exactly right. So when we did get responses back from organizations, they weren't great. So one email, in particular that I use as an example, it's like, "Hey, thank you for your question. We don't ask for donations, so that is completely up to you. But if you would like to give a donation, you can do so by going to our website or calling us at our 800 number between these hours. Thanks so much. See you later. Bye." Right?
Canned responses?
Yeah. Well, what's that? I don't know. It was not canned because they responded to the question. They said, "That's a great question. Why should you give? But we don't ask. So you just decide for yourself." And it was like, I'm a donor. I'm a potential donor. I'm reaching out. I'm asking for your help, and you're not willing to and able to help me. So there was things like that. Like one on social media was like, "Hey, thanks so much. You can go and give a gift on our website. Here's the web address. Leave me alone. I'm playing Candy Crush." I mean, it's just kind of like very, un-customer service focus, which is kind of, disturbing. And then just even things in the giving process, like as you go through, this is especially challenging with higher education institutions like colleges and universities. When you go to give a gift, there's 8 bazillion different gift designations. You know what I mean? And I use this example of a very, very well-known very large higher education institution, and they had like 120 different gift designations. And I'm scrolling through this list and I'm like, how could any human possibly make that decision? That's the challenge. As the donor is going through the process of completing a transaction, there's a series of questions that they have to answer. And many times they're not prepared to answer that, right? And then they kind of say, well, I need to go talk to my wife or my spouse or my partner. And they never come back. You know what I mean? Like, and it's over. It's game over, right? So it's like, it's little things like that I think make a big difference. So those are some things. But anyway, that's the one exercise you can do is kind of like send an email to yourself or call your own 1-800 number. The second thing you could do is go give a donation to yourself online. Go through the process, count how many clicks it takes you to actually complete the donation. And actually we have a friction self-assessment on our website, which if you pull up one window and have your website and pull up this thing on the other, it'll ask you questions as you go through the process, and you can self-assess how much friction you have in the giving process.
Well, there are so many organizations, clients I know that, I talk about this point of the donor journey, should be as easy and simple and direct. Don't crowd it with lots of other questions, because if someone's actually going to give to you and you're in contact with them, you've got lots of opportunities to ask them about their dog's name, at some other point in the future. This isn't the time to do it, but an actual self-assessment online that is a great resource, assuming it works well. Reason to think it doesn't, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great. And like, I think we've had like 600 or so people that have taken it. So we're actually using that data as benchmark data that other people can see how other organizations kind of scored themselves. So it'll be a helpful tool, I think, especially as more and more people use it. So that's kind of another exercise. Go through and kind of assess the friction in your giving process. But then maybe what a great exercise would be to do this with your board or with your staff or your senior leadership, and just ask the question, if I'm the ideal donor, why should somebody give to us rather than some other organization or not at all? And listen to how everybody answers that question. What you may be surprised is that your organization speaks with forked tongue. We found this through our study, is that like people had different answers depending on which different channel we contacted them through. So we got a different answer on email than we got on social media, than we got on their website, than we got on the telephone. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, we're not on the same page as an organization, right? And if we're confused as the senior leadership team or the staff of the organization, what do you think the donors are? They're completely confused. So that would be a fun thing to do. And then also, and this is a real practical thing that we found to be effective almost 100% of the time. If you go to your donation page, if you notice, most nonprofit donation pages are very simple, very clean, very little copy, right? And, usually the donation form is pushed right up to the top because we want it to be above the fold, because that's something we learned through like the days of newspaper when things actually, there was a fold, right?
Right.
Well, we found that actually all that is not helpful to the giving process, because if you look across industry benchmarks, less than 25% of the people that click the donate button on your website actually complete a transaction. Well, why is that? Well, because once they kind of get to that page, they're not fully decided whether or not they're going to give. Maybe they're not fully decided how much they're going to give. That's right.
It's so easy to get to that page, isn't it?
It is.
That people are getting to it. It's almost like the psychology of the real estate on the front page.
That's right.
Drives them to the donate page almost prematurely. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. And so what we find is take this kind of value proposition you do with your team, where you kind of like talk about like, what are the reasons why we should give, and kind of get like your central thesis for that. And then literally just put that copy on your donation page. We've tested that. We found like 200, 300, 400% increase in donations simply by adding more copy that articulates the reasons why somebody should give to you now. Simple things.
Wow. So that's really, so I guess if the board and leaders of the nonprofit are giving you different answers to that question, there's a little piece of work there to do to align folks on why the ideal donor should give to you. Once that work is done, that copy goes right on your donate page, above the fold, above the donate button itself.
That's right.
So people can read it.
Yes.
When they navigate to that page, not prematurely.
Exactly right. I think Howard Gossage, he was like this old ad guy from the 50s. He said, you know, like people don't read advertising. They read what's interesting to them. Sometimes that's advertising. So to put a modern spin on that, like people don't read donation pages. They read what's interesting to them. Sometimes that's your donation page, right? If they're there and they've arrived at that place, they're interested. And people need more copy to be able to understand. What we're trying to do is get the light bulb to go off inside the donor's mind, because we have all this institutional knowledge. We see our organization through a completely different lens. We live in it every day. Yeah. The donor may be their first time. So, yeah.
Right. That's fascinating. I think that's a really, really great, simple thing for folks to do. Not necessarily easy, but simple, which is clarify exactly why your ideal donor should give to you, and make sure that is prominently displayed on your donation page. And this is after, of course, all you've done these self-assessments and these tests to make sure it works. I love that. I think that's a fantastic takeaway, Tim. And we're only 25 minutes in. This is great. We've got more work to do.
We sure do. We sure do.
Yeah. So is there something that you can? So is it? Let me answer this. Rephrase the question here. Is this issue about having that copy on the donation page? Is it merely one of insufficient information, or is it one of we might say insufficient persuasion on the person of the donor? Have you been able to unlock the psychology behind that, or is it just a question of sort of big data testing?
No, I think it's a little bit of both, right? So it is this lack of information. So you know, what we like to say, like I use are you familiar with the concept of the funnel, right? Like the marketing funnel where you pour, traffic in, you're trying to move people consistently from interest involvement to investment, right? So we kind of flip that upside down. We say, look, people aren't falling into your funnel, they're falling out. Gravity, meaning the organic forces in the marketplace, do not naturally lead people to want to give away their money. So that funnel analogy, however helpful, is actually distorting reality. We got to flip it upside down. And so we call it like the donor mountain today. And I think this is like a great visual. I wish I could have had slides queued up because I could like walk you through this. But like we say, look,
we're turning the funnel, which is an upside down triangle, to a right side up triangle, basically.
Right. Yeah. To a mountain. Right. And so like my goal is to get my potential donor to the top of the mountain where they make the macro decision of saying, yes, I want to give. Right. The problem is they start down here at base camp. And in order to get them to the peak of the mountain where they make the macro decision of saying, yes, I want to give, or no, I do not want to give, there's a series of micro decisions that they make along the way. So for example, let's say I send you an email. The goal of the email is to get you to go online to my website and make a donation. The first micro decision that you have to make is, do I want to open this email? Right. And you have to make a decision. Do I want to read it? Do I keep reading? Do I click? And if I click, I get to a landing page. And there's a series of micro decisions the donor makes as they navigate the content, the copy, the images, the video, whatever's on the page. And if the content's compelling, if it's inspiring, if it moves them in some way, they might click the donate button. But there's still yet a series of decisions, even as they get to that final stage of completing the transaction. Do I want to make a one-time gift or recurring gift? How much do I want to give? Do I want to designate my gift in some way? How do I want to pay? These are all decisions, even at that last stage. And so the question for us is like, well, where are we in this whole kind of like donor mountain analogy? Well, we're at the top of the mountain, right? We've got the map. We know the way. We have a completely different perspective of the impact that our organization is delivering in the field and the valley below, but the donor can't see it because their vision is obscured by what's directly in front of them. And oftentimes what's in front of them are things that we control. It's our emails, it's our messaging, it's our social media posts, it's all these things that we control. So we, as fundraisers, as marketers, as nonprofit leaders, need to develop empathy for the perspective of our donors. Now, what's interesting, we did a study and we realized that people that work in the nonprofit space have actually highly elevated levels of empathy. And I think that's partly what draws many of us to this space. We really do care and can actually put ourselves in the shoes of other people and like we want to help, right? But sometimes we neglect that perspective, that same type of skill of applying empathy to our donor. And so we need to kind of like almost kind of descend the mountain, and we need to help them overcome these natural forces that may be, pulling them away from taking that next step in the journey. And the main way that we found to do that is really through a powerful articulation of your organization's value proposition. So we spent a lot of time really researching and trying to decode that.
Right. And so it sounds like, and I can reference so many examples where people are really focused on the purpose of their nonprofit as you would expect them to be, and of course the key difference between a for-profit organization is if I'm selling you a service, then you're giving me money back effectively along the same channel path.
Right.
I provide you a service, you provide me money.
Yep.
Whereas with nonprofits, we have to run separate channel paths where I'm providing a service to someone who typically doesn't pay for it, and I have to get money from somewhere else. So I'm running these two simultaneously. It's a lot of extra work, but it's easy to neglect the money in path, or if you're large enough, you delegate it to specialists.
That's right.
Then we get a lot of sort of customer style analogies that sometimes work and sometimes don't. Do you feel that largely that they actually hold, that if you're advising a director of development to think of their donors as customers or as potentially as investors, or is there really no direct for-profit analogy and we should treat them, uniquely as donors?
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes do. Yeah. So like, like the donor is the customer and the impact that we deliver is the product, right? So, Peter Drucker said that there's, any business really has one function, right? Which is to create a customer, or in the case of a nonprofit, he says it's to create a donor. So every single organization has two essential functions. There's marketing and innovation. So innovation means, how do we do our program better? Like, how do we innovate and continue to deliver greater impact? Because that enhances the perceived value of our product, which is the impact.
It's our core business.
That's right. It's our core business.
It is the core business.
And then I can go take that and focus on marketing that to more and more people to go and increase, the amounts of, in our case, impact for the case of a for-profit company profit, right?
Right.
So I do sometimes do that. There are like interesting parallels, but they're also very different, big differences. Like, for example, this is one thing that I think is actually really an interesting competitive advantage that nonprofits have over for-profits. We don't have a fixed price. Think about that for a second, right?
Yeah,
like we benefit from price elasticity. Our customers determine the price. Our donors decide how much they're going to give. And what we found through our research, one of the number one things that actually influences that is how forcefully we can communicate the value proposition. So if I can communicate a value proposition stronger, what's that?
The worthiness. The worthiness in the donor's eyes.
That's right.
Right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So if I can communicate a more effective value proposition, not only do I get more people to buy, in our case, give, right? But they actually give more. They give larger dollar amounts because they understand, maybe for the first time, the tremendous impact they can have through the organization, right, that they're giving to, which is really awesome.
Yeah. That is. I mean, because I think what we're using as a sense is this price or donation elasticity. It sounds like we're like really seriously geeking out with jargon here, but you know what I mean, right? So
of course,
sort of economic terms of elasticity, is that's in a sense a proxy for the emotive connection that a potential donor is making. I mean, all things being equal, I mean, the people's means and their ability, their disposable income, obviously has an impact on their ability to donate as well.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And that's a sort of, I suppose, outside the scope of what you're testing in a sense.
Well, yeah, yes and no. So I mean, you've probably been looking at all the stats that I've been looking at, right? So like the number of kind of giving households is going down. The total amount given from those households is actually going up. Why is that, right? Is it, partly because of like the wage, diversity in our world today?
Yes. Inequality. Yeah.
Right. I mean, but is it also, but I also think it's actually like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you know what we've been doing in the nonprofit sector for the last 20 years? Trying to become more efficient, right? What are we doing? So we're getting all these data, analysts and everything, and they're saying, don't mail these people. They can't give enough. Mail these people. They have they have the higher wealth score. They've got the higher capacity to give more. And we do it in the name of trying to get more money for the cause. But I also think that we're actually doing a disservice because, my cause is like unleashing the most generous generation in the history of the world. Well, if we actually leave behind the people, the widow's mite, the people that can't give big amounts, but they can participate through their giving, I don't think that that's great. I don't think that's great for philanthropy. I don't think that's great for nonprofits. I don't think that's great for our world. So that's
so
what
it'd
I
be
think,
better in some respects. In some respects, you'd want to have a larger number of donors with a lower average donation.
Democratize giving, right? Like just make it open and available for everybody, because there's something happens. We sometimes make the mistake that like the donor doesn't get anything in return, but that is not true, right? No, and there's very powerful intangible benefits that every single donor receives every time they give a gift, right? And they vary. And these are like the underlying motivations. I give as a sense of belonging. I give out of like frustration of a change I want to see made in the world. I give because of my faith tradition or what I believe. You know what I mean? There's all these different underlying motivations why somebody give. And when they actually do go through with that process, their well-being can be impacted positively, right?
Right.
I mean, there's all kinds of studies that show like the people that are more generous actually like live more happy, fulfilled lives, right? Like who wouldn't want that for everybody, right?
Right.
So anyway, that's why I think that digital can in fact lower the playing field in some way, because you don't have to have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to go put a billion of pieces of mail in the mailbox, right? You can actually like run Facebook ads for $100 and be able to reach people that way. And that's a big, thing that I think has been really good for digital philanthropy.
So have you been able to distinguish, and this is somewhat artificial, but a distinction between giving and this idea of giving back? The sort of older, wealthier, whiter, more male donor, or someone who gives who sits on a board even, and they say their motivation is I've reached a point in my life where I'd like to give back, and as opposed to someone who is at any other stage of life or in any other circumstance just giving. Have those patterns emerged at all?
It's funny you mentioned that. We're actually getting ready to run an experiment that actually makes an appeal. So when I ask the value proposition question to people, why should I give a gift to your organization rather than someone else? There's that last part, or not at all, right? And nobody ever addresses that question, that part of the question. So we're actually running a test that's kind of like, it's a first person kind of like donor's point of view. It's like, what was it all worth, right? Like, I've lived my life and did all the things that everyone told me to do, go build a business, save money, make wealth and all that stuff. And here I am sitting at the end of my life. I got a lot more time to think about things. And I've missed so many opportunities to actually, I feel like I'm going to cry even just saying this. So like, I've missed these opportunities to actually go and do something significant, right? Because I was so focused on success. And I mean, that's like, that's something I think for a lot of people, they struggle with that. And so, if we can actually reach people with that message earlier, you know what I mean? And like, kind of like say, look, don't make the same mistakes as I did, because that's not what it's all about, right? It's not about what you can get. It's about what you can actually like, do to help other people. That's how you're really, truly going to affect personal happiness, right? So we're testing that. I'd love to come back and share with you the results of that test, because I'm fascinated by it myself. Maybe I'm partial because I recently copied it.
I look forward to that. But younger professionals, and I think a lot of organizations, particularly in metropolitan areas, where you get sort of young professionals joining designated young professional boards or joining boards at a lot earlier stage in their career than some of their colleagues had, are much more interested in a participative form of philanthropy. Rather than I'm gonna hoard it for now, get my kids to college, for example, and then once they're through and I paid for the weddings, then I'm gonna start to give it away.
Yeah, I mean, to cats in the cradle and the silver spoon. You know what I mean? Like it's like I don't know about that. Like, because it's like, then all of a sudden it's like, oh great, now I've got all this money in the DAF, but like I get more excited about like kind of growing that bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden like they die, you know what I mean? And it's all gone, and they've never had the opportunity to experience the just unleashing of that generosity, right? Because again, I mean, we're going to so many different directions here, like in this conversation, but like you're hitting a lot of my hot buttons. But like even like DAFs, for
Welcome
example,
to the
and like
Nonprofit Problem Solver podcast. I have a tendency to do that, just jump all over the place. But
yeah, I mean
I just let my
getting me,
curiosity
no, I mean
dictate
you're
where
getting me
we
all hot
go.
and bothered about some of these things because it's like I get I mean look at all the money that sits in DAFs, right? Like we need
Donor
that.
advised funds.
Yeah, donor advised. Yeah, they sit there, and you know what I mean. It's like hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that's just kind of like sitting there because there's no really incentive to let it go. You know what I mean, right? Because I got my tax deduction. It's in there, and then I'm waiting for this like apocalyptic great opportunity to come by to someday, one day, open up the coffers, and I'm like I don't know, and like there's some things that are changing around that where they're actually like. Certain amounts have to be like liquidated or whatever every year or whatever, but it's different than normal foundations. But I don't know.
We're certainly not going to wait for the tax code to drive our philanthropy, right?
No. But I also think that it's like the people that are going and, kind of like trying to build their DAF, business. I mean, they're like people that know how to do cool things with money, right? Lawyers and bankers, right? They're not like people that are like philanthropists. They're not people that are social good people. They're people that are like, on
or
Wall Street.
This
is a different account that I can go manage your money in, right? So it's like I don't know, man. I'm not sure how I feel about all that stuff.
Yeah. No, I think the broader questions are also important. Let me ask you. This is yet another direction, but one thing I wanted to get at was two things. One, the sort of temporal or time with regard to what prompts people to give. How much of that motivation or return is immediate, and how much is over time? In other words, do people are people more motivated by the act of giving and the warm fuzzy feeling it gives them, or are they is that sustained by the impact they see in the organization? Because we hear a lot of this conversation around the money's gone to directly to program, and we're minimizing the overhead and all this sort of stuff. We're not wasting the money. How much of that is really bound up in donors' motivation? Is it more immediate, or is it really the impact?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? So like, that initial kind of like dopamine hit when you give a donation. I mean, that's a great, powerful feeling. And, the more that you kind of hit the feed pellet button, the more you get that feeling. Right. So I think that there's part of it, like we're giving honestly can be kind of like addictive, in a way, and in a good way, I think. But then it's also about like, the stewardship angle about that, right? So if I'm not doing a good job of building a relationship with my donor, continuing to, earn the trust that they've instilled in me through their gifts by reporting back on the impact of things, or, even just kind of like asking them how they're doing. I mean, like we do a lot of emails that don't have any sort of ask or anything. They're just a simple response generator where it's just like, hey, I would just, how are you doing today? You know what I mean? Like something's as simple as that.
Well, what's interesting about that is although it's digital, it's a relationship because of the engagement.
100%.
I mean, so many of the we won't ask in this communication is a lot of verbiage, a lot of pushing out information. These are all the things that we've been up to, but don't worry, we're not asking for it. We're just going to tell you all this stuff. But it sort of, if the donor actually reads through all that, they get to the end and they're like, wow, that's great. That's a lot of stuff, but I'm not necessarily engaging with it beyond that because I've not been asked to, as though the only form of engagement I have is my wallet, as opposed to my opinion, my thoughts, or do you want to know about me? As you said, how are you?
I mean, there's the old adage that like, if you want to be interesting, don't try to be interesting, try to be interested, right? You know what I mean? Like when you actually start
listening.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Listening.
Yeah, exactly.
The great conversationists are better listeners.
One of the big macro findings from all of our research is simple but profound. People give to people. They don't give to email machines. They don't give to websites. They don't even give to organizations. People give to people. And the more that you can actually humanize your communication and create a seemingly one-to-one relationship with every single donor, even though it's through digital, the more effective you'll be.
Right. No, I think that's great. That's shown in so many different ways, um, and folks increasingly are, particularly, I think COVID sort of pushed the limits here on this a little bit. Is that we accept a digital version of our relationships now. We're much more comfortable,
Right.
working across time zones and even asynchronously. Like I can leave a message for somebody and not necessarily have it live and in the moment. And I think people are much more comfortable with that. And if, as I said, if you can humanize it to the point of individualized relationship, then that's not far off the sort of real human contact.
That's right. Hey, so can I reward your listeners who have hung on with us this amount of time with like couple really quick things that they can do to try to increase their results? Okay. So this whole idea, people give to people. One of the things we've been testing over and over and over again, and it continues to make huge impact in terms of email fundraising. If you look at most nonprofit fundraising emails, they're highly designed. They've got HTML and graphics and images and big clickable buttons. If you're a large enough organization, maybe the copy sounds like it's written from a professional copywriter, because it usually in fact is. And the problem is when your potential donor sees that in their inbox, all they see is somebody trying to market to them. And people don't want to be marketed to, they want to be communicated with. And so one of the things we tested with dozens of organizations, we've done it in different countries, sending more of a plain text email, scrape away all the images, the graphics, the buttons, the marketing veneer, and even rewrite the email so it sounds like it's coming from one friend to another friend. 300, 400, 500% increase in donations through email by doing that one simple act.
Right. So do you strategically plant some like spelling mistakes and
No, we don't do that. We have tested, like if you're going to hyperlink something in the email, instead of like highlighting the text and selecting it and making it like, what's called anchor text, which is, the way that we do most of our calls to action, simply copy and paste the naked URL and drop it in there. We've actually tested that 10% increase by that one simple activity. So little things like
it looks like it. So in other words, you want to amateurize it to a certain extent. It shouldn't look like professional marketing.
That's right. And the email should not come from your organization. It should come from a person at your organization. Yeah.
Okay.
And test sending from different people. I mean, if you always send things from the executive director or the president of the organization, try sending it from like, maybe somebody lower in the organization structure. We found that sometimes that is like a more believable sender, and people are like, oh, this might be a really real person. I'm going to respond to them.
Yeah. Fascinating. Okay, that's great. Okay, last question I want to ask. But I could have started with this, but I was throw this at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Often I speak to people in terms of generating support for their nonprofit in looking at donations or people who give, but we often restrict that in our minds to money. But it's also important that people give time and people give expertise. And so, you've got to get a balance of all those. Have you looked at any of the psychology, what prompts people to give time as opposed to money, or time in addition to money, or to volunteer at a board level, whether particularly a working board, for example? Like if you were on a board, I imagine you're giving them a lot of, pro bono digital marketing advice and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there have been some studies done, fortunately or unfortunately, like we don't, a lot of our research partners are really focused on like, how do I, get money from the internet, not like volunteers. So we don't have an opportunity to do a lot of experimentation with that, but I have done some stuff like even early in Next After Days with like this global volunteer network, and they're trying to get more people basically to volunteer their time. And a lot of the same principles still hold true. So one of the things I identified as I analyzed their kind of, mountain or funnel, if you will, is that they were trying to get people to make too much of a complex decision too early in the process. And by doing so, they lost a lot of people that would have completed the application, which is the first step of the process. If they didn't have to go and like decide, am I going to go to Thailand or am I going to go to, Nepal? You know what I mean? Like it was like too big of like a decision too early in the
Right.
journey. So like kind of moving that stuff to like a later stage of the process can be helpful. So it's the same principles of removing friction, removing anxiety, just thinking through the different kind of like mental conversation that somebody's having as they're going through the process of, signing up for stuff.
So that's interesting, because I've also heard the opposite. So what are you basically saying there is sort of slow down the conversation, understand, and I'll use your term from before, the micro decisions.
That's right.
The step by step. So understand the journey in a more granular way. However, I've also heard the donor solicitation, and this would apply to volunteers as well, as a filtering process, a match, looking for that needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And I've shared this with in certain clients where this is clearly an issue about how they are looking for people or trying to connect with people, and to filter to accelerate that. In other words, just say like, here, are you a potential match, and having some 1 or 2 questions where you can quickly identify whether someone is potentially a match, rather than go through this extended persuasion only for them to drop off at the end. And so it's getting that balance, right? Isn't it, between the who you should accelerate and who you should slow down in terms of conversation?
Yeah. And the cool thing about digital is you can do both simultaneously. So let me explain. So, if you think about like interest, involvement, investment, like those 3 kind of like tiers: investments when they give money, interest is when they're kind of like, oh, this sounds interesting, and then involvement when they kind of like maybe raise their hand, right?
Right.
So with digital, you can do that, right? So you can kind of create layered calls to action. So let me give you an example. Somebody is scrolling through their Facebook newsfeed, and they come across this ad for the National Breast Cancer Center, and they've got National Breast Cancer Foundation, and it's this free ebook, What Every Woman Needs to Know About Breast Health, right? Now, if I'm the ideal kind of like audience for something like that, that might, kind of pique my interest. I click on it. I go to the landing page. I request the ebook. I give them my name and my contact information, my email address, right? And then immediately after I fill that out, then they're presented with what we call the instant donation page. Hey, thank you so much. Your ebook will be sent to you shortly. But while I have you, do you know that every year, blah, 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 you know what I mean? Like, but you can help make a difference with your gift today. And so it is a filtering criteria, because we know the quality of the leads that come in will have a certain instant donation conversion rate. And if that's really, really low, then probably the source of names that I'm acquiring is not great, right? But let's say that 5%, 10% of people give an instant gift. That means 90% of people didn't give a gift, but I've got email addresses for all those people. That's when those people can then go into my email welcome series, and they can begin this journey of learning more about the organization and be presented with opportunities to give down the road. So that's the beautiful thing about digital, is content marketing and kind of daisy chaining these calls to action together.
Right. Okay. And while you're, does this, I'm going to throw out, this is sort of a rhetorical question, but going to this idea of people give to people, and this question, you're making sure the email comes from a person and not necessarily the better known leader, perhaps. What does that say about brand and brand value for nonprofits?
Well, it's certainly not. It's maybe not important as we think it is in terms of influence decision. We've run unbranded campaigns, and sometimes we've found better results by just focusing on the core issues and, like the maybe the content offer itself before actually presenting the brand. So there's different ways where you can kind of like present the brand at more strategic times. I wouldn't say that it's not important at all, because with organizations that do have very high brand familiarity and affinity, obviously this makes all this stuff a lot easier. But still, even if it's a well-known brand, if I know I have somebody that I can actually link myself to as a human, you know what I mean? I'm going to feel more connected to that brand.
Yeah, I think, when I was listening to you speak, I think what was going through my mind is that it's not that brand is less or more important. It's just about when in the conversation of the journey it's most effectively introduced.
That's correct. That's right.
Right. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. What a thrilling ride through digital marketing we've had these last 45 minutes.
Yeah, this is fun. I could do this for a couple hours, but I know that your audience might not like that.
No, it's level detail. Right. If it's interesting, they'll carry on. So let's just remind folks a bit about Next After and where they can find things online. and then where they can get in touch with you, Tim, if they want to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, everything is on our website, nextafter.com. And you can get to the Next After Institute with all of our training programs are there. Also, if you would like to really kind of geek out and spend, 2 days just having a lot of fun, we are doing our conference this year back in person. It's not till September. So I'm hoping everybody is, inoculated by then, but it's going to be in Austin, Texas, September 23 to 24, I believe. But you can find out all the information. You can view all the past speakers and the whole lineup at niosummit.com, neosummit.com.
Niosummit.com. And will there be a virtual element to it?
We usually do. Yeah, we'll usually do some sort of like live stream version. But I'm just telling you, like the in-person is like way better. I mean, like yes. I mean, I think 2 years ago we were in Denver, and we took over the Ellie Calkins Opera House and turned it into like the Greatest Showman like circus tent, and it was like amazing. We had like acrobats hanging from the ceiling. They're also like licensed mixologists, so they like mix up drinks for folks. I mean, it was a great time. So it's lots of pageantry, Chocolate River. Our theme this year is Willy Wonka. So there'll be a Chocolate River, and it'll be amazing.
Right. Okay. I'll come be Mike TV and shoot up the place.
That's right.
I could geek out on Roald Dahl as well, so I won't do that. Okay. So thank you so much, Tim. This has been Nonprofit Problem Solver podcast number 37 with Tim Kachuriak from nextafter.com. And we've had a fantastic ride through digital marketing, lots of great takeaways. And if you enjoyed this replay, please share the link and let us know what you think. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.